people, I believe it's from the First Baptist Church in Petersburg, where my Uncle Shan is now the pastor. And he has a Bible study group at Potomac State on Wednesdays every week. So it was the two of us and my Uncle Shan and another gentleman, and the rest were all college-age kids that went. There were 12 of us all together. My little cousin Marissa is going to school for a business degree at Potomac State, and part of her, I guess, sort of like a capstone project was she created a non-profit, Almost Heaven Hands of Hope. So they started teaming up with a church in Puerto Rico, and the minister there and my Uncle Shan they've become really good friends, and they've gone the last I want to say 3 summers, maybe 4, and then COVID happened and they weren't able to go. And Marissa actually spent 10 weeks of her summer in Puerto Rico the summer before COVID. So however long ago that's been now, those days are running together. So this is our team of the 12 of us, all college-age kids except, like I said, the 4 adults. I was the mom of the team because I was the oldest female that attended. Several of us, this was our first time on a flight, me included, and it was definitely an interesting experience with everything going on with COVID and just in general being on an airplane the first time. So yeah, those are people at the airport. We left Petersburg at 2 a.m. and drove to Baltimore. Our plane left at 7, I think, 7:30ish, and we boarded and had to wait about an hour before we left. Just congestion at the airport. There was no issue other than just traffic. So once we landed in Puerto Rico, we unpacked and we stayed in what is their youth church. It was set up almost like a 4-H camp. The men had one room with bunk beds, and the women were in another room with there were 8 of us, 4 of the guys, so there were about 12 beds total in the women's room. They were filled with things and people, and it was tight quarters, but it worked for the week. We had a common area that we had Bible study in the evenings, where we ate some of our meals. The ladies from the church were actually the ones who took turns fixing our breakfast and bringing it there to us before we headed out to our work site. So our very first project, though, was repairing and cleaning up at this house. And the man's name was Hector. He was a bachelor. His wife had passed away. I'm not sure how long before we had been there, but it had been a few years. He has a daughter who has a small child who's probably about 3, and he hadn't been able to visit his granddad because of the condition of his home. And Hector actually lived in the mountain area of, we were in Carolina. So he lived kind of out of the town and up on the side of a mountain, which was more like a hill, I thought, for us. For coming from where we were to there, it was a hill, but he called it a mountain. So the first day was just clean up, and the men climbed ladders, painted, stripped down the boards. The ladies, we painted the porch, did all kinds of repairs on the outside. He just had a lot of clutter and junk. He just needed someone to help him get organized. So this is just a little bit of the work that we had done before, how it looked before and after. his house is on the side of the hill, and it was a 2-story. A lot of the houses that we saw were single-story homes. Can you see now?
Come back here.
The carport underneath was filled with
Car park.
car parts and just a lot of junk that needed thrown away. And Hector was very involved with us while we were cleaning. He would sit around and say, no, that's not basudo. Basudo is trash in Spanish. And he'd say, no basudo, or yes, that one is. And so a lot of the younger girls carried the garbage and the junk and the things he thought he needed to keep from off the carport into a shipping container that he had parked in the back of his yard. I'm not sure how they got the shipping container up there, because the road we drove on would be equivalent to like traveling through Klein Gap. Maybe like where we go on our hayride. It was a narrow, windy road and one lane, and straight up the side of the hill, the mountain for them. But he had a shipping container in his yard. No. This just kind of gives you a better idea of the work we did. We spent 2 days here cleaning, removing things, hauling junk away, repairing the roof. Some of the girls actually went inside the house and started cleaning for him. He had his roof leaked, so he had basically one room that he could use in his home. It was his kitchen. He had a small table and a recliner in his kitchen. His bathroom floor was rotting out and needed repaired. His bedroom had a leak, but it was so cluttered up with things that he couldn't use it. So the girls cleaned inside, and there were anthills that they had moved into the house, and they were living with him. I thought they were giant anthills piled up, and you had to get a shovel and scoop the whole anthill into a trash bag. They bit, and it hurt. By the end of the second day, Hector was really starting to get rid of things. He noticed that he had a lot of clutter and things that were not necessary in his life anymore. And over the side of the porch it would go, and onto the truck. So this little Ford F-150, I guess, ran off of propane. He called it liquid gas, and it had a propane tank on the bed of it. And they loaded all the junk on there and took it down from his house down around onto a piece of property he owned below, and unloaded everything. Threw off all the junk, came back, and he said, there's a snake skin in the bed of the truck. It was about 4 feet long, and it was a boa constrictor. And he said, don't worry, that's only half of it. He wasn't worried at all. We didn't see any snakes, thankfully. Lots of little lizards running around, and some large iguanas off the front of the house over the bank. That really shows you how cluttered up he had his carport, and he was trying to live there and use that. No, Hector's not in that picture. I'll show you Hector. He has there's a clothesline strung under the porch. He washed his laundry upstairs and hung everything out to dry. And the man and woman in the front of the second picture, those are our drivers for the week. They attended the Baptist church, and they had a van, a 15-passenger van, I think, and they were our transportation for the week. And they would go with us to the work site and stay. Sometimes actually helped us do things, and if we needed something, they'd run out and get it for us and come back as quick as they could. The language barrier was tough because they didn't. The lady spoke English. Her husband spoke a little bit. By the end of the week, he was speaking more and more English. I think he knew more than he let on.
You'd ask him a question and he'd whistle and his wife would come over real quick and answer our questions.
No. So this is Hector's daughter in the front. She came the first day and helped us work, and she was so excited that we were there and able to help out her dad. She jumped right in, and they got into a little argument over things that she thought he should get rid of and things he thought he needed to keep. And she at one point even took some things and out of the storage container and told the girls, "This is trash, get rid of it." And they said, "No, he told us no." She said, "I'm telling you, yes, it is trash, get rid of it." But Hector is the man in the blue shirt there in the back. He was so excited and such a pleasant man. This kind of shows you like the mountains of Puerto Rico. This looks out the front of his house. There were 12 of us there working, plus his daughter came.
And the pastor's nephews were there.
Yeah, and there were a few people from the church that came and worked with us. The nephews and the daughter of the pastor. The daughter was our translator basically. She actually lives in Pennsylvania with her mom and goes to school, but then during the summer goes to Puerto Rico with her dad and stays all summer. So our first 2 days were spent there cleaning and just talking to Hector. Dennis Rogers, who's another gentleman that went with us, an older gentleman, he spent a lot of time just sitting and talking to Hector and getting to know him and finding out a little bit about his life story, how he got where he was. And yes. On Wednesday of that week, they split our team up, and the girls and I all went to a farm to work. And the farm was it's run by a gentleman who attends the church. He grows produce. He actually has a greenhouse there. And a lot of the things that he grows, he donates back to the community through the church, sort of like a food pantry. But the land that the farm is on, I guess it was kind of unclaimed land, and people used it as a dumping ground. And they took all their junk and unwanted trash and dumped it. And he purchased this land and spent, I don't know how long he's had it. He spent at least 2 years just trying to clean the trash out of it so that the land was even usable. Marissa told us that the first time that she went to the farm, it was bad. The weeds were overgrown everywhere. There was piles of junk where they had just cleaned up things but thrown it there because they didn't have a way to haul it out or get rid of it. So when we went this summer, I thought it looked pretty good. I wouldn't have known that the land had been a dumping ground. Our first job this day was to take this pile of gravel and spread it around in a pen. There were chickens, turkeys, goats, all kinds of animals just pinned up together in this little fenced-in area. The farmer's name was Eric, and we finished this job in about 15 minutes. He thought it was going to take us 2 hours to do. He didn't realize he was getting 8 women that could work and not 8 kids Emily's size. They typically, if a mission group comes, it's full of younger children, and so he wasn't expecting that much work to be done that quickly. You can see the greenhouse in the background there, the tent. That frame that the greenhouse is built on is actually the frame from the original church. The hurricane Maria came in and destroyed the frame of the tent that they were having services in, and they had already built their permanent building next to it, but they weren't actually moved into it yet when Hurricane Maria hit. So they donated the frame to the farm. He got new covering and uses it as his greenhouse. So The next thing he had us do is go out and move some dirt. I don't think this was planned for us to do, but we hauled some topsoil from a pile inside to flower beds at the entrance to the farm, just to help spruce things up and make it look a little nicer. The young lady in the back here in the pink, she was our workhorse for sure. She was not afraid to jump in and get dirty and do the heavy lifting and labor. So he took that dirt, spread it in here to make like a flower bed, and he was going to add shrubbery to that later and make a nicer entrance to the farm for people when they come. And while we were there, some customers actually came to purchase flowers. The flowers were beautiful that he was growing there. That's Eric, the farmer, and his bull, Jacob. He also taught us salsa dancing at the church on Wednesday night, which was kind of interesting. I don't know that I could do it now, but the other thing at the farm that we did, he was getting ready to plant sunflowers. So he had tilled up 2 rows of soil, and they till it and then they heap it up to make it above the ground, and then plant on top of that. And everything he had been doing prior to this was by hand. He had just received a tiller, a walk-behind rototiller, and it didn't work real good, but he was able to till up 2 rows, and we pulled the grass and the weeds out and helped heap up the dirt so that he could plant sunflowers. But we were done by lunchtime. They brought us lunch, and he said, I don't have anything else for you to do. He said, if I'd have known you could work this quickly and this well, he said, I'd had more rows tilled for you to prepare. So we got to go to the beach after lunch and finish up our day. The men, 4 of them, went to work on this roof at this house. It's another 2-story house, and it's a very, very steep roof. This roof also leaked from the hurricane. How many rooms did this man have that he could use?
He had 1 room, but he had a box spring and a mattress on the floor, a metal chair, and his wheelchair. And that was all the furniture he had left.
It all had been ruined from the hurricane and then from the leaking after. But the roof was so steep that you had to tie yourself off. And there was another team of men actually there from Georgia through a different group. And they had started this project on Monday, worked Monday and Tuesday until our 4 men showed up on Wednesday to help. And they hadn't gotten much finished. They were 4 older gentlemen who weren't knowledgeable of roof repair, and so that slowed them down greatly. You can see the blue tarp flying in over Puerto Rico. You could look out the window and see the blue tarps on the roofs of the houses, and anywhere there was a blue tarp, that was a roof that still needed repaired. There weren't a lot this time, but my Uncle Shan said from the first time they flew in, he said almost every house had a blue roof, a blue tarp. And this time, I could probably count 50, maybe. And he said there was no way. They couldn't have counted the number the first time they went in. So there's been lots of teams coming in and making repairs. And progress is happening. It's just been slow.
There's not very many wooden houses left in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, both of the 2 we worked on were wooden. Most of the houses were concrete and single story. So this just kind of shows you how steep it was and how they tied themselves off and tried to repair. And what slowed the men down a little bit here is that they were trying to hit,
Inside framing, the purlins for 2x4 stood on end, and we had to have the screws in those. So you got people inside trying to tell us where to put the screws on the outside. It slowed us down a good bit. Because there's no insulation in Puerto Rico.
On Thursday, we went to a food pantry. The ladies, the men went back to the roof job and worked. And this food pantry used to be a children's museum. It had closed right before Hurricane Maria, and then when the hurricane hit, it damaged the building, and no one kind of took ownership of it. It was just standing empty, and the roof was leaking. And this group, I forget what the name of the food pantry was, they acquired the building and they are trying to repair it, and but they're distributing food out of it currently, even with the roof leaking. So one of the jobs was to take all the desks from a room that was usable and move them kind of to a basement area, and they were going to be donated, but they all had to be stacked and packed out of the way. So these ladies worked on that part during the day, while about there were 5 of us who packed food. We spent the entire day there, I think, and packing bags of food. You can see in this picture in the background all the bags of food that were already packed and ready to go. The food bank was run totally by volunteers, and there were 4 workers there that day, and they pretty much ran the place, the 4 of them. No. These are the items that we packed. A 3 to 5 pound bag of rice, a can of beans, a vegetable of some type, an animal protein, which was a lot of Vienna sausages, and another meat, so like Spam or tuna, and then a can of tomato juice or tomato sauce of some kind. And there was one special item, which was sometimes it was a box of Velveeta shells or ice cream cones. Just some boxes got packages of Oreo cookies. But those items were supposed to be enough to feed 2 people for a week. So that was kind of, I packed food all summer, the year that schools closed, and for kids. The things that we packed in those bags were way better than what these people got for a week. And our kids complained and were ungrateful of what they were getting, but if that would have been sent home, it maybe would have opened their eyes a little bit, maybe. So we set up an assembly line to do this. The lady, you saw her there, she was showing us how to pack the things in the bag, and she said, we just take the bag and go down the line and get one item at a time. And I said, okay. I looked at Cheyenne, and I said, Cheyenne, we're not doing it that way. I packed all summer. We're going to pack an assembly line. So we set up an assembly line, and we packed 601 bags. And they wanted us to get 400. They said, if you can get 500, that would be great, because they had already donated 100 bags for the week to the elderly in the community, and that was 100 they hadn't accounted for. So they said, we need 500 for the week. We've given away 100. If you could get us 400, we'll be in good shape. And we got them 601 bags. We could have done more, but the materials being restocked for us slowed us down. They had to go downstairs on an elevator and get carts full of things and bring up and unload and then go back, and that process slowed us down the most. And they also had a strange way of tying the bag shut. When you go to IGA, they knot your bag and tie it shut, and then when you get home you just tear it open or cut it. These had to be tied so that they could be opened in case items needed added to the bag. So, and the plastic was not like the plastic bags that we have. It was heavier. so tying them was difficult. You had to stretch the handles really far apart and thin them, and then tie them almost like you would tie your shoe. And so, poor Maddie Wetzel, this young lady right here, she tied all 601 bags. By the end, she said, "My fingers are numb." I offered to trade places, but she said, "Nope, I got it. I know how to do it. I'm not trading." So,
That's a lot.
yes, it was a lot. It was a lot of bags.
The food pantry gives out an ungodly amount of food a month. I think they said, what was it, 1 million pounds?
I don't remember.
I don't know why not.
And everything that was donated had to be inventory. They had to check the dates on it. They had to check the how much of it they received. The paperwork part of it was tremendous. I didn't see that much, but this young lady did a lot of that for them. And of course, everything was in Spanish. So she said, "I'm not sure if I'm doing it right, but I'm trying." And that's what she worked on the entire day. This was the 100 bags of food going to the elderly that the girls loaded up, and then they also had milk that was going with those for the senior citizens. This was at the church. One of our last days was spent just cleaning and maintenance work at the church for them. We were actually the very last mission team for the summer. The pastor left in September to go to Connecticut, and he is a pastor now at a church in Connecticut. So he is actually in this picture working. This is the pastor, Jesus, and this was our first time going, but my Uncle Shan said that this was very unusual for the pastor to jump in and help with the work. That he normally doesn't do that. He just comes to check on the team, see how they're doing, what do they need, and then goes back. But he actually did come out to the job sites with us and do work. This is at the church. This was one of the smaller buildings that was originally built to use, I guess, like a children's church at the main church. It had some water damage in there, and the drywall had to be replaced. There was no air conditioning, tight quarters. The girls climbed up on top of the church, washed the windows, swept off the roof. Just things that needed done that the members of the church weren't able to do. And we did some painting and some washing up inside. The church is all concrete inside, so everything was painted. And on Sunday morning, we went to church service with them. It was definitely a different experience. The service was in Spanish. They did translate for us, but that in itself was so different. You would listen in Spanish, and then you would hear it in English, and it was an experience. No. And at the end, they brought us all up, and they prayed over us, and during that time, Nicky, the man on the left there, he waved the Puerto Rican flag through the sanctuary of the church, expressing their thanks and their gratitude to us. And it was very, very touching, very emotional. And on Friday was our free day. They actually took us around to tour San Juan, so we got to see the fort at Old San Juan, and some of downtown, some of the historic parts of San Juan. This was the city part. We were working in the country part. And these are some of the houses that were right up the street from where we stayed in the children's church. So some of them were very well kept and would be neat and tidy, and the lawn was well taken care of. And then some were abandoned. And after the hurricane, people just left, and they left it like it was. And no one has taken responsibility for those buildings or for the property, and it sits empty, and it's becoming overgrown. Yeah, and these are all concrete, one-story houses. This is just some more of Old San Juan. This gate was used by the Spaniards to actually shut off the city. There were two, right? Did I say there were two gates, one on each side of the island? And this was their, like their Capitol building, sort of, their government. And we stopped. They parked the van in front, and we walked across to look out over the ocean. And as we were walking back across the street, several people blew the horn at us, and they told us it's because they know why you're here. They know you're here to help, and they're thankful that you're here. This was the San Juan Cathedral, which we got to go in and look at. They were getting ready to have service, so we didn't get to spend a lot of time in there. They did tell us that Mark Anthony and Jennifer Lopez got married in this cathedral. So, and this was Dave and I at the Old San Juan fort, looking out over the side. So.
No, the red roof building there behind us, that's actually a huge cemetery for the island of Puerto Rico. You know, everything around it, just a big massive cemetery with like the crypts.
Pastor Dave asked about the weather. We had great weather while we were there for the week. It only rained on us one day, I think, and it was hot, but not unbearable. The humidity didn't exist, and so they worked on that roof for 2 days in the sun with no shirt on and no sunburn. We went to the beach 2 times and no sunburn. And the water at the beach was calm and smooth, and the sand underneath was soft and smooth and not broken shells and pieces of things. And I just felt like you could walk forever, and it just didn't get any deeper. And so I went as far as I could, and that was farther than I could at Myrtle Beach or at Outer Banks, wherever. It just was flat, straight out. Do you have any questions for us? What's your question?
About their cemetery, they don't. Everything's above ground, right? Or do they?
Some of those were not above ground.
Okay.
That was an old colonial cemetery to where it, just that fort that we're standing on was started in the 1600s.
Okay.
Some of those graves could be that old in that cemetery.
Okay.
We didn't actually go down into it or get to look. We just saw from above. But from above, it looked like some of them were just monuments on top, like what we would have.
Right.
The food was good, and it was an experience tasting some of their traditional dishes. We had rice with every meal, so if you like rice, I'd suggest going. Plantains were like a cousin to a banana, and they served those with almost every meal. And I tried them because I wanted to say I tried Puerto Rican food, and that's it. I just tried them. I didn't like them, and I didn't eat them.
No, I like the plantains.
So every time we were together and we had them, I gave my plantains away. They were just different.
A lot of fried chicken. A lot of cooked chicken there.
Yeah, we had a lot of chicken. We even had pizza one evening for dinner, so yeah, the pizza was good. They did take us out to eat at a restaurant one evening, and that was kind of interesting just to experience the culture of the people. There were lots of birthdays celebrated in that restaurant that night, and it kind of reminded me of being in like Shoney's or Golden Corral, and all the waitresses would come and sing happy birthday, and they did right there too, and almost at every table. I don't know. But it was a great experience, just seeing the people and how truly thankful they were for all of our help. Eric, the farmer, there's no way. He said it would have taken me days to do what you 8 girls did in 4 hours. The food pantry, it would have taken them several days to pack 600 bags with the 4 people, and 5 of us were able to do it in about 6 hours. And we could have done more, but there was always a holdup. And that was a little bit aggravating for me to get used to, is they weren't in a hurry about anything.
Island time.
We'll get it done. We'll get it done when we get it done, and don't worry about it if it's not done. But here we've got to get everything done, and we've got to get as much done into a day as we can. So that was hard to get adjusted to. So they are talking about going back next summer. So if you think you might be interested, they'll take anyone of all ages. It doesn't matter. There's something for you to do.
You gotta be 18. Right?
There might be an age limit, yeah, I cut off.
think
I
you
don't
have to be
remember
18.
for sure, but. Any other questions? Some of you have already heard this one, so sorry.